Hello, BookTube. Well, the time has come. It is March the 1st. That means March Mystery Madness, an old, venerable, and beloved BookTube event. I am once again one of the co-hosts. It is a delightful time for me. I've mentioned many times on this channel how much I love reading murder mysteries. Absolutely love them. I think they are almost universal in their appeal. And I read them in all their variety. I'm constantly finding new authors because, oh my, are there a lot of them out there in the world. I'm constantly finding mystery authors that I've never heard of before. And we have a kind of a theme this year with March Mystery Madness. It is lather, rinse, repeat, which is very broad and can obviously be interpreted in a million different ways. Lathering and rinsing, I don't know much about. My surly houseboy does the laundry. But repeating, who my, I have been repeating myself for the better part of a century. And so I thought I would do that today for my first video for March Mystery Madness, which is to do something I've done before. We're just going to go over it again because due to an apparently widespread outbreak of poor judgment, there are quite a few of you who are new here, probably a couple of thousand since last March Mystery Madness, when we did this as well. I want to go over what it is that we're talking about when we talk about a mystery at all. What is a murder mystery and what isn't it? Why we like them is a subject for another video, but what are they? What are their rules? Are there rules for murder mysteries? Things you can and cannot do? And there's a famous article that I read to you every year that goes over that. It's by Ronald Knox, and it's called A Detective Story Decalogue, where Ronald Knox, somewhat predictably, gives us 10 commandments for murder mysteries. And I don't say that mysteries have to follow these commandments, but I find them fascinating. And I thought if you haven't seen me talk about this, you might find them fascinating too. So let's go over them. Let's go over the 10 commandments for murder mysteries, and then you can just tell me what you think. Rule number 1 is the criminal must be someone mentioned in the early part of the story, but must not be anyone whose thoughts the reader has been allowed to follow. Meaning two things. One, you can't introduce the murderer at the end. Oh, it's this guy who you've never heard of. He's got to be present. The murderer's got to be visible to you. And you can't be following the thoughts of a character and they're not mentioning or thinking about murder at all, and then it turns out they're the killer anyway. It has to be that it can't be someone that we've known the thoughts of, because we would know they were a murderer if we knew that. But the character has got to be part of the dramatis personae. That's part number 1. Can you think of a murder mystery that you really like that breaks that rule? I, myself, agree with this rule completely. It would ruin the drama. If you're tracking clues and wondering who done it and tracing down suspects and their alibis, and then the killer is somebody else, somebody's not in the story at all. Then command number 2 is all supernatural or preternatural agencies are ruled out as a matter of course. And here we have no less an authority than Sherlock Holmes. No ghosts need apply. In other words, it cannot be supernatural. This must be happening in the real world. So if it looks like someone has died in a locked room and you ruled out all possibilities, it can't be that someone used witchcraft or something like that. I think this rule goes without saying. If you're going to break this rule, it has to be the foundation of your murder mystery series. But even when it is, in a case of, like, for instance, Miss Beaton, the criminal, the crime is set firmly in the real world, even if there is a supernatural element. But anyway, let's move on to number 3. Not more than one secret room or passage is allowable. So they can't just be everywhere. Fortunately, murder mysteries have kind of moved on from secret rooms and secret passages. Once upon a time, you couldn't swing a dead cat without hitting a murder mystery that hinged on that completely. And I bet I know exactly what book Knox is thinking about here. One specific book that had someone cropping up where they absolutely could not be, and it was because of a secret passageway. And at the end of that book, I'm not going to name it, I'm not going to spoil anything for you here, but at the end of that book, the big reveal is that there's a second hidden passageway. I'm sure that Knox felt as robbed by that as I did. So you can't have more than one, according to Senior Mark. Then number 4 is no hitherto undiscovered poisons may be used, nor any appliance which will need a long scientific explanation at the end. This is kind of an addendum to number 2. It can't be anything supernatural. It can't be anything that you have invented, even if it's natural, that you need to explain. Oh, but this poison does work in this way. And I'm going to reveal that to you at the end when I've got you all in the living room. No, it can't be that. You've got to be working with known quantities. Commandment number 4, or number 5, sometimes gives us trouble. We have navigated it successfully in the past. It is, of course, a product of its time. This came out in 1929. And none of you have given me any problems. You know exactly what the author means, but I'll explain it anyway for our extremely delicate 2023 sensibilities. Commandment number 5 is no Chinaman must figure in the story. And what the author means by that, he is using Chinaman as a shorthand for what was done in the stories of his day. What he means by that is you can't have a character in the story who is just purposefully enigmatic, who's inscrutable is the word that was used in the 1920s. You can't have a character who is the repository of all these kinds of mysteries and therefore a natural suspect and a natural killer. It lets the reader down. It's one-dimensional storytelling. So we want to leave that out. What Knox is talking about in this definition is the stereotypical depiction, the Fu Manchu depiction of Chinamen, as they were called at the time, as being inscrutable and mysterious. You can't have that. The characters have to be normal people. Then commandment number 6 is no accident must ever help the detective, nor must he ever have an unaccountable intuition which proves to be right. I understand what Knox is saying with this commandment, but show me a murder mystery that doesn't break this rule, especially a lot of the really great ones. They operate absolutely dependent on intuition. In fact, in many cases, our main character, our detective, even if he's on the police force, gets his reputation and has his success because his intuition is really good, better than normal intuition. To rule it out completely is to make everyone into a thinking machine, a brain, which was a fad of murder mysteries at the time that Knox was doing this. But this is one of the instances, I think, where one of his commandments is dictated by personal taste. Accidents help detectives all the time, and their intuition is what a lot of detective series are based on. I mean, we like to go straight away to one of the hallmark characters of ratiocination, of pure logic. We like to go to Hercule Poirot and these little gray cells. But think about the way that Poirot solves half of the high-profile mysteries in which he occurs. It's a huge amount instinct. It's a huge amount intuition. So I don't know about this command. I'd be interested to hear what you say. The commandment number 7 is the detective must not himself commit the crime. Too bad Michael Dibdin didn't get the message on this, but we're not going to talk about that book. I've ranted about that book plenty of times. We're not going to do that. The detective himself must not commit the crime. Simple as that. It is the dumbest possible dime store thriller crap of a twist to have the detective be the killer. So let's just, it's only one line. Knox doesn't feel that he needs even to elaborate on this because it's self-evident. Let's just call it self-evident and move on. Commandment number 8 is the detective must not light on any clues which are not instantly produced for the inspection of the reader. And that makes perfect sense. That is, again, bad storytelling. If you're following Detective Stone as he walks down the sidewalk and he's mulling over this case because it looks totally unsolvable, and then we're told he looked down and on the sidewalk he saw it. Oh, heavens, this makes everything clearer, he exclaimed, and put it in his pocket. To be revealed in the end of the book, that is totally bad. Totally dirty pool. I agree with Knox here. That should be avoided completely. The clues should be visible. That's one of the fun parts of a murder mystery, is that the clues should be visible, and the thrill is that you didn't put them together the way you should have. Then commandment number 9 is the stupid friend of the detective, the Watson. Here Knox is being a little bit simplistic. Watson is not stupid in the Holmes stories, and nobody knows that better than Knox does. So you know what he means. He isn't talking about Watson in the stories. He's talking about Nigel Bruce in the Basil Rathbone movies. That's the kind of stupid friend he's talking about. The stupid friend of the detective, the Watson, must not conceal any thoughts which pass through his mind. His intelligence must be slightly, but very slightly, below that of the average reader. And he can't keep any of his thoughts to himself. So he's the one who's got to say, if he thinks it, he's the one who's got to say, Well, by Jove, Inspector, how could you possibly think that? He's the one who's got to provide the impetus for the main character to dump exposition or to shine. So he can't be enigmatic himself. And then the 10th commandment is twin brothers and doubles generally must not appear unless we have been duly prepared for them. It was just coincidence that I mentioned Poirot, who does have a twin brother. But you know what the author's saying here. It basically boils down to a couple of the commandments that we've already seen, which is cheap and dumb storytelling. A twin brother who appears out of nowhere, that is the big solution. Yeah, so that's why my character could be the killer and yet be seen in an ironclad alibi across town at the exact time of the killing. It's a twin brother. No. No, you can't do that. That's just dumb. Twins and lookalikes of any kind is just dumb. Unless you have prepared the reader, like, for instance, a mystery that I just read. The detective is really butting his head against a case of jewel thievery and cannot figure out what's going on. He feels like he's pieced together the timeline of everyone involved. But earlier on, a few chapters earlier on, he offhandedly noticed that two of the characters have very much the same physical build. He doesn't think anything of it, and the narrative moves right on to other pyrotechnics, so the reader is encouraged not to think anything of it. But in retrospect, when you look back, you have been prepared for the fact that one of those characters, if he really wanted to, could impersonate the other, as long as you're not looking too closely. And it turns out in the course of the book that's exactly what happened. But that was introduced. You saw that ahead of time. You got that note, even if you weren't asked to dwell on it. That's fair. But pulling a twin brother out of nowhere? Please. So those are the 10. That's a decalogue of murder mysteries. What do you think of those rules? I ask this every year. Can you think of a murder mystery that you really liked that breaks one or all of those rules, even down to no Chinaman need apply? It wouldn't be Chinaman in this case. It would be, I don't even know. What would the 23rd century version be of what Knox means of Chinaman? It wasn't bigotry on his part. It was this character is a stand-in for, what would it be in the 23rd century, in the 2023? A hacker, for instance. If a writer, a mystery writer who doesn't know, anything at all about computers, were to haul on some sort of AI expert, some sort of hacker, he'd be able to fill that character with all kinds of mysterious knowledge and all kinds of possible culpability. That's the sort of thing that Knox is railing against. And even that applies today. But do you know of a murder mystery that does that and is still really good, that you still really enjoyed? When we're talking about no Chinaman need apply, if we were to use the 23rd century or the 21st century version of the hacker, I immediately think of Lisbeth Salander, right? The girl with the dragon tattoo. I immediately think of that. Does that guilty? Is she a Chinaman in that novel? I shouldn't keep tempting fate and the algorithm by using such a horrible old term. But you know what I mean. Every year you have known what I meant. In all of these cases, can you think, for instance, of a murder mystery you really liked in which the detective does have a clue that is not revealed to you? I'm pretty sure that for almost every one of these commandments, there's a great Sherlock Holmes story that breaks the rule. I'm pretty sure that's true. But I thought I would start off March Mystery Madness with conceptual stuff. What are we talking about when we talk about this subject? I am planning on making at least a video every day. We'll see if that works. I have a guest. I may not. But there's a lot to talk about and a lot of murder mysteries to go through. So I'll wrap this up for now, but you will definitely be hearing from me again. Thank you, BookTube.